Hey, Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Gary, and I am one of your hosts for this week's Roundtable special. And also joining me is...
Maria.
Oh, hang on. Mark.
And I'm Matt.
And we are your hosts, your hosts for this month's Roundtable. This is March, and we're going to do a bit of a change up this week. So my co-host Adam is on we seem to be on a bit of a relay at the moment. So the week before last, I was busy doing stuff, had a busy work week and some other stuff going on. Couldn't record this week, fast forward. And Adam has now got some stuff on, so he can't make recording this week. So as a bit of a coinkydink, a nice coincidence, it was our week to record our monthly Roundtable. So we might as well just slot that in very nicely into the usual weekly slot. So it's been very cool to be joined by, you guys know them by now. You know our Roundtable. So there's a few people missing. So Harry, Jordan, and like I said, Adam, they're not here at the minute. So they're here with us in spirit, though. And I'm sure they've got some thoughts on what we talk. I'm sure they're going to listen back to this episode and be like, I should have been on that recording because what you've either said is wrong or something you've said is not something I agree with. So we might get their thoughts as a bit of a catch up on the next one. But yeah, you know these guys by now. So we've got Maria, we've got Matt, we've got Mark. And the theme for this month's Roundtable is the Sea Devils. We thought it'd be a good one to jump into and talk about some classic stuff as we're sort of in the run up now to the penultimate, I think it's the penultimate special for Jodie's Doctor. And it's going, the next one is going to be Legend of the Sea Devils, which we assume is around Easter time. So what better time to do a bit of a walk down memory lane, talk about some of the moments from the previous two main stories. So we're going to focus mainly on the third Doctor story, the Sea Devils, and the fifth Doctor story, Warriors from the Deep. There's a bunch of other stuff, obviously. There always is with Who, as you guys know. There's stuff with Big Finish with the Sea Devils, there's comics, there's some books and so on. So we're not going to dive too heavily into that unless these guys want to. So we're going to focus on those two stories. And then towards the end, we'll do a wee bit of a what we look forward to. You know, what do we want to see in the upcoming special featuring these classic monsters? But before we get on to all that, remember to follow this podcast in your fave podcast app so you don't miss a show when it lands every single Friday. We're on the socials too, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. There are links on the website, which is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk, and you can listen to all of these episodes for free over there. Plus you can check out all of the cool reviews and articles and opinion pieces from these guys on the website as well. We have a free Discord server. Again, the link is on the website. Jump over and sign up and chat Doctor Who with other Who fans over there. And this is where I usually do Adam's YouTube stuff, so I better do that. I don't want to get in trouble because he will listen and take notes, etc. So remember to check out Adam's channel over on YouTube. It's called The Geek's Handbag, and he's on the socials too under the same name. So go and do that. So before we crack on with the Sea Devils stuff proper, let's see how you guys are doing. Maria, how are you doing at the moment? You all good?
Yeah, I'm great, Gary. Thank you. Busy couple of weeks at work, but yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. And it's been beautiful weather as well, so can't complain really.
Busy. But yes, the sun has come out the last few days, which is nice, which is always good. So those of you listening not in the UK, this is quite rare for us. We're literally about to clock into April, and at this time of year, you know, before we wreck the planet, of course, this time of year, it was sort of grey and a bit cold still. But yeah, it's good. The sun's out, which is great. How are you doing, Matt? You old bugger.
Good, thank you, Gary. Yeah, very well. Same as Maria, I'm really busy, but aren't we all at the moment? But I did manage to slot in some classic Who this week. So I can officially say I've done my Doctor Who related items for this week. I've been checking out some of season 22, Old Colin. I've been delving into that and obviously checking out the two stories that we're going to dive into today. Nice.
You done your homework? Good. Good stuff. Mark, how are you doing, friend? You all good?
I'm good, thank you, Gary. I'm clearly suffering with the mute button. Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I haven't done my homework, unfortunately, but I feel like I know the Sea Devils in particular, like the back of my hand. So I'm looking forward to being proved spectacularly wrong as the podcast goes on.
Well, that's okay. I've done half of my homework. So I watched The Sea Devils a couple of days ago, but I've not watched recently Warriors of the Deep. Warriors from the Deep, of the Deep, in the Deep, at the Deep, from the Deep, Warriors of the Deep. It is of, isn't it? Yeah. I've not watched that one recently. So I've kind of half done it, which is all good. So a couple of us are flying by the seat of our pants, and a couple of us are going to be very knowledgeable and know what they're talking about ish. And everybody, you can't see this, dear listener, but everybody just did that. Yeah. We'll see how that goes, Gary. See how that goes. Right, yeah, let's kick off then with some classic story then. So Mark, coming to you, because you have done your homework and you're not going to mess anything up. What do you prefer, Sea Devils or Warriors of the Deep?
Oh, come on. That's a fairly easy question. The Sea Devils, the Warriors of the Deep, or from the Deep, or in the Deep, or is ghastly, quite frankly. But we'll come to that. We'll come to that later. Okay.
So it's Warriors of the Deep. I've got that confirmed via Wiki, so we're all good. Okay. So the Sea Devils for you, Matt. What about you, dude? Which one do you prefer?
So I had not seen either of them until this week. Before, and it's a landslide. Sea Devils all the way, not Warriors rolling in the deep or anything like that.
Okay, interesting. And Maria, I know what you're going to say, but what do you prefer?
Okay. I think I do actually prefer the Sea Devils. I haven't really been able before to kind of do a comparison side by side, but because I watched both stories this week, it's been really interesting to kind of compare them. But yeah, I think the Sea Devils for different reasons. I'll agree with the others. Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like I need to go to bat for Warriors of the Deep just to balance it out a little bit. I mean, who doesn't like a trip to old Sea Base 4 and dealing with that stuff? It's a double whammy though. Warriors of the Deep. You get the Sea Devils and you get their cousins, their brothers, whichever relation. What's the family tree with the Silurians and the Sea Devils? Because they're pretty much the same species, right? But one's been adapted for, obviously one for land, one for sea. I think that's what it boils down to, I believe. Anyway, so I feel like I need to go to bat for Warriors of the Deep. I think I'm going to have to do that because I'm not sure what Jordan or Harry would have gone with. Probably the Sea Devils, knowing those two. Yeah. Although I'm not sure on Harry. Harry might have been a curveball. But yeah, I'll go with Warriors of the Deep. Not because I like that one over the Sea Devils, but I feel like I need to go to bat for old Pete. So yeah, I'll do that. All right then, Maria, why do you like, in a bit more in depth then, is it because Pertwee's performance? Is it because the overall story? Or is it because you just think it was a good introduction for them as classic monsters in Who?
It feels like the Sea Devils is actually a better thought out story, if that kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously there's lots of different elements in the story, but it feels everything around it. So all the kind of nice stuff, all the location stuff and everything, it kind of works with the concept of the Sea Devils, the idea of them, wanting to reclaim their Earth, I suppose. And they actually, for the time, they actually look really well designed. And I think that is kind of, that's one of the drawbacks, I think, of Warriors of the Deep. I just find the actual costumes in that are kind of, maybe because of how, because it's set within, it's obviously a studio-based production, and the costumes just don't really stand up to a lot of scrutiny, I think. In the Warriors of the Deep, whereas I think that they actually feel more convincing in the Sea Devils. Just on a kind of visual aspect, I do actually prefer it for that reason. I mean, if we're just talking specifically about the monsters themselves, I think the concept of them is a lot better. The idea, that they're kind of working in partnership with the master as well, because he's quite a manipulative character. So, he's kind of there kind of stirring the pot a little bit. And I just like the way they look, I suppose. Why would I suppose the other things about the Sea Devils as well is it is a 6-parter. And I suppose, if I'm honest, there are bits of it that kind of a bit of padding in the middle. But I think the ideas in the story are actually really good. I mean, obviously you've got the bits with the master and the manipulation that he has, and obviously he's the Doctor and Joe go to visit him in prison, and I like that kind of relationship that the Doctor and the Master have, and there's all the kind of action set pieces, I suppose, which really work, because it's obviously set on the coast, and it's got all the right elements, I think, as a story to kind of feel as realistic as it can be for a Sea Devil story. I suppose Warriors of the Deep kind of struggles in that way, because of the setting, even though it's set in a sea base, it kind of just doesn't excite me in the same way, I suppose. I think I prefer it. And obviously you've got John Pertwee, who is, the action hero. He's jumping in and out of different hovercrafts, and what's those things on the water that they were using? What do you call them?
Boats?
The things when they were riding on the water. Sorry, it's gone out of my head. I can't remember what they're called. But I don't know. There's just something about it. I suppose for a 6-parter, it actually holds its story pretty well. There's something happening in every episode, whereas I think with Warriors of the Deep, it kind of takes a long time to kind of get started as a story. I mean, you've got lots of wandering around for the first episode, whereas this is kind of it feels like each episode kind of stands up for the most part, and I really enjoy it. Yeah, I think that's why I really enjoy the Sea Devils.
Nice.
And obviously you could see the relationship between Joe and the third Doctor is really strong as well. So yeah, there's lots of elements in it that I enjoy.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so I think the scene you're talking about is when they jump on the jet skis.
Jet skis, yeah, that's the thing I was thinking of, and I couldn't remember. Yeah, jet skis.
Yeah, so I think initially the script had it as just a standard speedboat kind of chase, but it was actually John Pertwee that didn't have it. He was like, no, we have to do something better than just a boat. So let's hire some jet skis and no stuntmen. So that was fun. But yeah, nice rundown, Maria. That's cool. Okay, Mark, for you then, some stuff that you like, or not just like, but maybe dislike about the Sea Devils. Why is it your pick for this one over Warriors of the Deep?
Partly nostalgia. I mean, this was the first John Pertwee story I ever watched.
Oh, wow.
Back in 1992, it was the one or 3, I think it would have been 2. They chose it as the kind of repeat run that BBC Two did at that point, which I think is how a lot of Doctor Who fans of my age got into Doctor Who. So this was the first third Doctor story, so it's always had that kind of that special place in my heart because of that. I mean, it still stands up now. Like, I've watched it so many times since, and I still always find like new things to enjoy in it. For example, like Joe bribing the guy so that she can get a motorbike and get back into town and stuff like that. There's just lovely little touches, and it's just this really warm production. You can just tell everybody's friends with each other. You can tell that John Pertwee's just absolutely in his element back, with the Navy, which is, where he did his service, during the war. So it's just, there's just something really infectious about the kind of production of it, I think, before you even get to the story. I think for me anyway is what kind of sells it. And I think it's quite an influential Doctor Who story, I think, in terms of how it portrays the Doctor and the Master's relationship. It's been hinted at kind of in series 8, But I think here you do get a sense of, no, they do actually kind of like each other. That's the thing, and I think this has been such an influence on Stephen Moffat in particular in how he wrote the 12th Doctor and Missy. So there's that element of it as well, and it just looks amazing. Like all the location stuff is just fantastic. There's so much iconic imagery in it, which you don't get. Well, you do get in the Warriors of the Deep for the wrong reasons. The sea devils coming out of the water, all the stuff in the oil rig. The sea devil kind of lurching behind the Doctor, at the end of part 1, I think it is. Whereas, Warriors of the Deep, what's it got? It's got a whole episode which is essentially the Silurians kind of melting through a wall. Like, I'm pretty sure that's like the whole of part 2 is they're trying to get through that wall, and then they get through the wall. And there's just no pay. And it's a shorter story, but it feels longer as a result. And I think because of the fact that it's studio bound, because of the fact it's just quite drab, boring white walls, whereas the Sea Devils, it's like, it's at a Navy base. There's a minefield. There's a prison. They're on jet skis. They're on oil rigs. It's properly that kind of 6-part thing that Terrence Dicks and Barry Letts used to do so well as sort of script editor and producer. Is you've got to kind of constantly have something interesting happening in each episode, because I think what everybody always forgets with Doctor Who is that it wasn't designed to be watched in like one go. It was designed to be watched over 6 weeks, and they really understood that. I think that's. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're watching it together, it can feel like padding, but actually it's just to keep people tuning back in, because next week there's going to be some jet skis or, things like that. So yeah, it's just, I think it's one of those, it's this point, they're just firing on all cylinders during the Pertwee era. They just know exactly what they want to do with the show. And it's just a joy to watch, really. I haven't even talked about the Sea Devils themselves, which are obviously great.
They're obviously great, yeah. That's cool. Now, Reg, I think a lot of people agree with that. And it's the cool thing that I like about the Sea Devils is that it feels like a Bond movie that's split into 6 parts. It's got that proper old action-based, lots of location, lots of cool sort of character progression as you go through the story. It's not just about, oh no, there's a monster coming out the water, let's run away. There's a lot more to it, which is cool. Good answer, dude. Yeah, nice one. Matthew, why do you like the Sea Devils over Warriors of the Deep? Let's have it.
So yeah, as I said previously, before this week, I hadn't seen any of them, and I can't believe that they've only been in 2 stories. Yet everybody who knows about Doctor Who has heard of the Sea Devils. Yet you talk about some others that have been in it more, and they've not been heard of. So I think they've got this iconic feel to them without really having much screen time. I know that the extended media has had a lot to play in that field, but also when I did sit down and watch them for the first time, I got to admit I didn't feel like there was any padding whatsoever. I sat there and watched all 6 parts at once, and didn't look at my phone once. Which I got to admit I normally do with Classic Who when it gets to episode 3 or 4, but I didn't, and I was amazed. I feel like the story just progressed nicely the entire way through, and like Mark and Maria said, there's something in it on every episode to keep you entertained. I know you could argue that there's a lot of, okay, let's go back to the naval base. Okay, now we have to go back to the prison, and then back and forth, sort of. But I think it kind of works because everything else is there. I feel like Katie Manning and John Pertwee just work so well together that it's a delight to watch them on screen. You feel their friendship, their real friendship coming through on screen constantly. And I know, having met Katie back along, she had nothing but amazing things to say about John, and you could tell that they were best friends, go on holiday together all the time. And anyway, I find the story fascinating. with the idea that they got the Royal Navy in to help with the episode, with the story, and a lot of the extras that we would assume were just extras brought in and put in Royal Navy costumes were actually Royal Navy officers, which I thought was great. And they were so convincing with the model of the submarine that the Royal Navy went to the BBC and thought it was this secret submarine, and they got in trouble for it. And then they had to prove that it was a model, which I thought was brilliant. But I just really, really enjoyed the story. And with Warriors of the Deep, it dragged, even though, like Mark said, it's a shorter story, but it felt much longer. Every episode, it felt like it could have been 2 episodes made into 4, felt like 6. I've never really been that big of a fan of Turlo, so I don't know if that helped or not. But it just didn't work for me. And I felt that the Sea Devils, in particular, had hardly anything to do than run around and shoot people and then die. That was it.
They were the henchmen, really, for the Silurians, really, weren't they? They were kind of like, they're like a henchman. They were just there to kind of go off and do this thing, be a good soldier, and kind of go and do it. And that was such a shame, actually. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. They didn't really get to do very much in Warriors of the Deep. I mean, they actually, like, I don't know, their design looked kind of Japanese, you know, like a kind of samurai kind of warrior.
Yeah, it did.
Which I didn't mind, actually. I thought it looked quite good, but it felt like maybe you shouldn't have had both of them in the story. Because obviously you had the Silurians already, and you know, they could have just pushed the action on their own. Really, they didn't really need the Sea Devils there. So yeah.
But in the Warriors of the Deep, we get a Merca, right? The old the Merca. Come on.
What was the point of that? What was the point?
There's always.
I really hope they bring it into Legend of the Sea Devils. Because it's about Chinese pirates, you know, I think there's lots of like high seas swashbuckling action. You could see, like, I could see them attempt to do the Merca, but like good. Like a proper sea monster that, you know, is attacking a ship. We'll see. But
I do.
Yeah, it's dreadful. It's dreadful.
I do feel sorry for them, really, because you know, if you kind of realise that, you know, they were still painting the thing, you know, just not that long before they had to actually shoot it, and, you know, there was green paint going everywhere. You do kind of feel sorry for the people behind the scenes that were trying to make it realistic, and you know, they get the 2 guys from Rent a Ghost, which is kind of, you know, absolute classic casting, you know, to kind of try and move this thing. I mean, on its side, it didn't actually look too bad, but when it kind of stood up and it was kind of moving, I think they could have kind of maybe just not shot it the way they did. And it might have looked okay in a certain light, you know, if they kind of turned the lights down, it might have looked half decent. But
that's the problem. Nobody in 80s Doctor Who until Graham Harper understands the concept of atmospheric lighting, you know. And it's just, the direction of Warriors of the Deep is insane, because surely you would, as a director, you would be presented with that thing and go, right, how the hell can we hide this? Like, what tricks can we employ to kind of make this look less bad?
Yeah.
But no, it's just like, no, let's just whack up all the lights, shoot it kind of dead on, you know, frame it right in the center of the screen so you can see all of its imperfections, all of its flaws. It's crazy to me that a director would choose to do that, but there we go. That's 80s Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? I was going to say that actually, the when you look at any of the set, well, most of it is a set, but the lighting has just got one setting. It's just on or off. There's no atmosphere or mood lighting, and that was just the trap that they fell into, I think, especially in Davison's era, where I don't know, it was like cinematographers like, well, we don't have to worry about that, save some time on all that gumph. Just worry about, the story. No, there's a little bit of merit in that, I suppose. You don't want to waste all your time and money, but at the same time, there's surely, there's some artistic benefits to having at least someone to say, are you sure, this big rubber suit thing that looks like a repainted donkey from last year's school nativity play. Are you sure we don't want to just darken this up a bit of, like they did with that Tom Baker story, Talons of Weng Chiang. Whenever they're in the sewers and you see like the rats and all that sort of stuff going on, it's almost pitch black. So they're just focusing on the atmosphere. It's just, you don't want to shoot that thing in daylight or in bright studio lights. It would just look ridiculous. You just want to create a bit more of a, you almost want to shoot it in a way that you kind of see it, but the viewer's mind makes up the rest of what the monster would look like. You want to try and employ, I think that's Mark saying, you just want to employ that kind of clever sort of film and TV making methods to make it look a bit more. But so the only time it looks cool is when I think towards the end where it meets its demise, where it's, when it gets stuck in the ultraviolet light generator thing and there's a big effect on it and stuff. And, that's not too bad. And having said that, there's a couple of things are okay. Like with the scene where Davison's swimming underwater, that was a cool little, bit. And so there's a couple of bits in there, but I totally get what you guys are saying. It's very static and it's very, lights are on and that's it.
I did actually like that cliffhanger. I thought it was a really good one. But what made me laugh is the doctor goes into the water and Turlough immediately assumes that he's dead. Tegan's doing her best trying to help him out, and it's kind of like so dramatic. Oh no, Tegan, he's dead, he's drowned, and off they go. And that kind of made me really laugh because he'd only just hit the water. So, they didn't even wait around to see if he was okay. Off Turlough goes. And I think Turlough had a really bad story in this one because he didn't really do very much. He was kind of a bit surplus, really. So, yeah, it's a shame. But I did like that cliffhanger. I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Yeah. Why don't you like Turlough? Sorry, Maria, go on.
Why don't I like Turlough?
I was going to ask Matt that question, but I don't think you like him too much either.
Actually, I think he was a good concept, but I think once he's kind of had the arc with the Black Guardian and the White Guardian, there wasn't really very much left to do with him. Really, it's a shame because I think the actor's actually, a good actor. I'm just a bit kind of disappointed because I suppose the idea of an assassin within the TARDIS is actually not a bad one. I just think, they kind of ran out of ideas about what to do with him, and he came across a little bit snarky at times. And, him and Tegan, because they're quite, that Tegan's quite a strong character, I don't think they kind of necessarily gelled together. I don't mind him, actually. I don't mind him, but I think sometimes there's not enough for him to do as a character. And that, that's a shame. He does suffer in some of the stories. I think this one definitely, because from what I remember from watching it the other night, he just kind of is in the background for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And even Tegan, who's quite a strong character, doesn't really get that much to do. Which is a shame, really.
Yeah. No, agreed. I think you mentioned earlier, Matt, that you're not a fan of Turlough. Why is that?
Very much echoing what Maria just said. But then again, I haven't had a full crack at the whip with Turlough because I haven't seen all of his stories.
Oh, okay.
So It might be a little bit harsh for me to say I don't really like him that much. If I know Mark has an opinion that I'm sure he'll want to share. But he does. Every time I've seen him, he spends his whole time arguing with everybody else, and that is purely based on the writing, I'm sure, and the fact that, as Maria said, Tegan and Turlough are so alike that they're going to butt heads, and they do constantly. And if he's not doing that, he's arguing with the Doctor, and they didn't know what to do with him. Like you say, after the Guardian sort of arc came to an end, they didn't know what. It felt to me like there wasn't enough left in the character to flesh out, so he was a bit stagnant. Okay,
yeah, I guess that's one of the trade-offs with having a busy TARDIS team with Adric, Tegan, and the Quiet One versus having a smaller TARDIS team, which a lot of people prefer. A lot of people prefer having just one or two companions. They think it makes for a better story. But then if you haven't got the substance within the character, then you almost want someone else to come in and sort of create a bit more of a dynamic grouping, I suppose, between the Doctor and your companions. So it's weird, isn't it? A bit of a trade-off there. But Mark Strickson's pretty good as Turlough. But I agree, the character just kind of didn't feel like it had the legs after, his sort of turning point with the Guardian stuff. I know Mark's, come on, dude. You've got an opinion on Turlough. We're sure of it. What you got?
Yeah, we've not got enough time for me to go into all my issues with Turlough, but I'll boil it down to one thing. Maria's right. It's a good concept. But the problem is that in the Davison era, nobody wants to be there anyway. So throwing in a character that's an assassin or like an anti-companion, it doesn't work because everybody hates their time on the TARDIS. So he just kind of blends into the background. Oh. It just doesn't work. And the thing I don't understand is that Janet Fielding and Peter Davison are so brilliant together. The ideal scenario would have just been to go, okay, well, Sarah Sutton's contract's not being renewed. Let's just keep Janet and Peter together. And actually maybe flesh out the relationship and actually kind of sort of have this kind of thing where like that sort of slightly, fractious relationship that they got actually, like a kind of 10th Doctor and Donna thing where like, now they're actually mates, but they can take the mick out of each other and all that kind of thing. But instead they throw Turlough in. And I think the problem is you've not established that Tegan and the Doctor like each other very much. You've kind of established in this and the Doctor do, but not to this extent that, because by throwing Turlough in there, you kind of want that narrative thing of he like upturns the apple cart and like upsets the TARDIS dynamic, and he never does. Even in the Black Guardian trilogy, he's just kind of there and occasionally pick up a rock to try and brain Peter Davison, but that's about it. So yeah, it was a wasted opportunity.
Who do you prefer though, Turlough or Adric?
Adric, 100%.
100%.
And I'll tell you for why. Because actually, the Adric Fourth Doctor relationship's really good. He only becomes rubbish. Yeah. He only becomes rubbish when Peter Davison comes in. No, I'm not blaming Peter Davison. I'm just saying that
sounds like it, dude.
Something happens with the character.
Jesus.
And the writing of the character. I think it's probably just more a production team issue. But it just kind of just doesn't work. Two young people arguing doesn't work when Adric is a kind of young student to Tom Baker's older Doctor. It works quite well. But
yeah. Sorry, Peter. I'm sorry. I know you listen as usual. I'm going to bat for you though, buddy, on this week. Your worries are deep in your Doctor, so yeah, I'll stand up for you.
He's not listening anymore if he was listening.
Yeah. Matt, Turlough or Adric?
Adric for sure.
Maria?
Definitely.
Oh gosh, that's an unusual question. Oh God, who would I prefer? Okay, I'll go for Adric as well. I mean, he's an annoying little twerp, really, but yeah, I suppose he tried. I don't know.
He tried, bless him.
They're both completely different. It's a difficult one to kind of pick one against the other. Yeah, I'll go with Adric.
Interesting. This is the only podcast where I think anybody's ever shown any preference and love towards Adric over another character. So that's kind of cool. But who would have thought that on a podcast about something as cool as the Sea Devils, we're talking about Turlough and Adric? It's taken a turn. Let's bring it back round. One thing that I do like, actually, way better than Warriors of the Deep for the Sea Devils, is the experimental soundtrack, which is very cool. Now, a lot of people are turned off by it because it sounds very it's too sort of electronic and synthesized, and it's too quirky and out there. But I really like it. It's one of those little. It's nothing too crazy, but it's one of those things that definitely stays in your head after you've watched it. Especially that little bit, whenever you see the Sea Devils that are about to, come into a scene or something, or whether there's a sort of a wide panning shot and you see one off in the distance, you hear that kind of, can't really do it, but it's like a do-do-do-do. It's like a strange little audio, little theme that they have for them. So I really like the music for that. And it's, I think it plays into what we were talking about in a kind of way with Warriors of the Deep, where the Sea Devils feels everything was bespoke for the story. So all of you can tell that they did their homework with all the location scouting, and as Matt was saying, drafting in the Navy to do all that stuff, the amazing creature design, the relationships between the Doctor and the Master and the Doctor and Joe is all very good. Warriors of the Deep, sorry Peter, block your ears just for 30 seconds. It feels like it's very stock. Like, let's just use the same set that we used last week on another story. We'll just move the barriers around a little bit and give it, we'll move that silver looking shelf thing to the other side of the metal steps, and, everything's cool. And the music feels very stock. It doesn't really stay in your head afterwards, and the story's kind of forgettable to a degree, that sort of thing. So, sorry, Peter. Yeah, you can listen now. But yeah, so I really like the soundtrack for the Sea Devils. But is there, before we move on to like some stuff that we want to see in the newer one, are there any other thoughts from you guys around standout moments that you want to carry over? So is there like a certain concept from those stories? Go on, Mark.
Well, I just wanted to kind of just jump onto what you were saying about the soundtrack, because I think what's really interesting about it is that the soundtrack for the Sea Devils it's not quite before its time, but it's certainly at the forefront of kind of like Brian Eno and sort of artists like that. And then when you get to Warriors of the Deep, where that has become like a fairly, you've got Tangerine Dream, you've got all these like bands that have been really influenced by that stuff and are pushing that stuff in like really new directions. The Warriors of the Deep soundtrack doesn't feel as kind of forward looking and as like futuristic as the Sea Devils one does. It's really strange, given how much time has passed and how much music has changed in the interim period. But that was just a kind of nerdy music thing I wanted to throw in.
Yeah, it's cool. So it was still the Radiophonic Workshop, I think, that were overseeing that stuff at the time. But it was Malcolm Clarke, I think, was the composer. He sort of put himself out on the ledge a little bit and said, actually, why don't we do some really interesting stuff? Let's not do the typical, stuff that we've had so far. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Fun fact about Malcolm Clarke, which I discovered when I think the last time I did any research on the Sea Devils, was that apparently, I don't know if this is true, but this is a kind of urban legend around Malcolm Clarke and the Radiophonic Workshop. Blue Peter was scheduled to do some episode about, I can't remember, I think it was like ancient Egypt, and the British Museum had brought this like ancient Egyptian instrument that nobody had heard, nobody had played for centuries. And it was very much like, do not touch, do not do anything. The story goes that Malcolm Clarke snuck into the Blue Peter Studios after the office closed, nicked the instrument, recorded the sounds of it, and then just kept it for his own use in the Radiophonic Workshop, which I think is great. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I thought you were going to say after he had a few beers then, not after being in the office, but yeah, either or. Yeah. Bigger set of balls after a few beers to go and do that, but nice. Go on, Maria.
No, I was just going to say, I'm glad you guys like the soundtrack to the Sea Devils. I mean, for me, I have to be honest, that's the only thing about the story that I don't like. I don't know whether it's because I'm, particularly sensitive, but I kind of find all that kind of really electronic stuff that's happening. It's kind of very jarring, I think, for me personally. That's the only thing I don't like about the story, and I do actually prefer the more gentle kind of Warriors of the Deep kind of soundtrack, because it doesn't it's in the background rather than kind of front and center, which the Sea Devils incidental music is. But aside from that, I mean, the Sea Devils is a fantastic story. I mean, to be fair, I just can't watch it very often unless I turn the volume down.
Unless you turn the volume down. Okie dokie. So I think the scales are firmly weighted over into the side of the Sea Devils. The more that we talk about it, let's talk about the upcoming story then. Legend. I'm going to give up. Legend of the Sea Devil. Let's just call it that. Sea Devils. Matt, are you looking forward to this upcoming story? Not just because it's a special, but because the Sea Devils are present. And is there anything that you want to see in this story, specifically to the Sea Devils?
I'd like to know a little bit more about their backstory and maybe see a little bit more. Because I know that it's kind of explained, but it'd be great to have like a flashback and see, as well as kind of know a little bit, but not too much. I know with expanded media, it's obviously probably been delved into. I haven't listened to any Big Finish or read the comics with the Sea Devils in, but I'm sure it has. Plus, also new Doctor Who on the telly. I mean, it's always something to look forward to. I really like the design of them. More so now I've seen the previous design, because obviously I had an idea of what they were in my head, just as you do as a Doctor Who fan. But now I've watched the two stories. I like how they've updated without changing completely, like they did with the Cybermen.
Yeah.
It's a subtle changes to the design. I think it works really well. And I just hope that is this one written by Chris Chibnall?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that he does some justice.
We're all hoping for that, buddy.
Yeah, I think that's really what I'm hoping for most, is that they're not used as kind of henchmen, like Maria said, with Warriors of the Deep. That they have really a really good crack at the whip in the story.
That's fair enough, dude. Yeah, we don't want to. We certainly don't want to see a different alien or a different monster or somebody that's sort of present in the story and is controlling them. So they're just, lackeys and stuff like that. Unless, of course, they mimic the Sea Devils and the Master's back, and he's in cahoots with them. So that could be an interesting one. But Mark, looking forward to this one, dude.
Yes, definitely. I think I'm really looking forward to it. I've kind of really come round to the era with sort of Flux. So yeah, I'm quite excited for it, and I think it's so great that the Sea Devils, I think, are possibly the only, aside from the Daleks, the only kind of classic Doctor Who monster that has come back looking pretty much like they looked. When they first arrived. Obviously the Daleks were just they're brass, so they're just a bit bulkier and a bit more metally. But and again with the Sea Devils, it's just the headpiece is just a little bit more refined, slightly darker. It looks great. I'm intrigued because I feel like, obviously knowing it's about pirates and stuff like that, I can't help but feel that this Sea Devil is going to be some kind of pirate captain that was like woken up early or something like that, and is kind of just separated from his tribe, and he's kind of just been like making a life for himself on the high seas. Because just the way he's dressed in the trailer, the fact it's kind of just him on his own, he's kind of striding out of this house, does kind of suggest there's a different take on it than we've kind of seen before. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I think in terms of kind of Chris Chibnall writing it, I think I'm remembering this correctly. So there was an extra special for the centenary, which is also obviously going to be Jodie Whittaker's last story. So obviously they kind of would have then retooled Chibnall's plan for her departure for the centenary. So I think the Sea Devils one, is actually just his kind of last, like, well, what have I not done? Now that I've been given this extra episode, like, what have I not done? I'd quite like to bring the Sea Devils back. Let's do that. So I think sometimes when a writer is just doing something because they want to do it. There's a lot of fun involved in that, and they kind of challenge themselves a bit more to kind of give you something that you haven't quite seen before. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Master shows up at the end, but I have a funny feeling he won't be manipulating the Sea Devils again.
Interesting, dude. Very interesting. I've just got this image in my head now. Now that you've said that you'd like him to be a sort of pirate, I've just got this feeling of him just collapsing all over the ship after half a bottle of rum and, is a little bit tippy. A bit of a Jack Sparrow kind of, like a sea devil, but sounds like Johnny Depp's Captain Jack. That would be good. That would be Chibbers, wouldn't it? That would be Chibbers. Yeah. To try and appeal to the millennials, boomers, whoever. Maria, you looking forward to this one? I think Maria's going to go the other way. I'm pretty sure. Here we go.
Actually, I'm going to agree with everyone else. I think because I've actually watched the two Sea Devils stories now. I think it's kind of whet my appetite for obviously the next special that's coming up. I hope that they do the Sea Devils justice, because if the original Sea Devils story kind of showed anything, it's that you have to kind of think about the environment that you're going to introduce these monsters in, because obviously they're meant to come out of the water, and we were treated really with the Sea Devils with all the kind of location work. So I hope that they've gone out on location for this whole story, and that it kind of does them justice, because they are a classic monster, and they actually looked, I mean, the trailer doesn't really give away very much, but the actual monster itself actually looks quite cute. And I think that, because I think they said originally it was kind of based on a turtle, so it actually doesn't look very menacing at the moment from that initial trailer. But I'm interested to see, is it one sea devil? Is it a group of sea devils? How much can he do in an hour, basically, with the story? I would love it to be a fantastic story for them, because I think they deserve it. They're one of the iconic monsters. And as Matt said, I think they are something that people remember. So, I am looking forward to it. I hope the story does them justice, and I hope they've been on location and spent loads of money on it, and it looks fantastic. I can hope, can't I?
Yeah. Well, we're still paying the license fee, so they better have gone out and spent a little bit of money on it.
I can just see Chibnall with his piggy bank left of budget, just cracking it open like, right, this is what we got left. Okay, so we can go to that location and we can go to that location.
Yeah, the principal cast, we've got their lunch sorted, everyone else. Bring a packed lunch. It's going to be a long day. We've got no money for food. Oh, crikey, yeah. So I'm wondering if it's going to be some kind of isolated story like we've seen. What was the other pirate story, the Matt Smith one? Was it Curse of the Black Spot? Is that the one? Yeah, that was like a sort of seafaring sort of, not really like a monster creature sort of thing with the Sea Devils, but that was a sort of one-off thing with like the high seas and the whole pirate theme and stuff like that. So I wonder if it would be like that, or whether they will, or Chibber, will try and make this one and the Centennial episode, Jodie's last one, a little bit of a link and sort of mix these two together, because you would think that with the whole, I don't want to get into that too much, but the whole timeless child thing and potentially the Master coming back, I feel like that needs more than just one more hour for her last story, because otherwise we might run into a little bit of Rise of the Skywalker territory where there's a lot of loose ends and there's a lot of stuff going on. And by the time you finish, it's like, wow, you had to speed run through the story to get all of these things done, because it does feel like it's a bit of a turning point, like we had in the handover between Russell and Stephen as showrunners. It feels like we are coming up to like a very definitive big change up and a really big, different direction for Doctor Who once Jodie and Chibbers has gone. So I feel like then, more so than like, the previous finales and the previous things, I don't know, it just does feel like just having one more 1 hour special probably wouldn't be enough to do all of that stuff for Jodie's Doctor. So I'm wondering if this isn't just one isolated story just to tell a Sea Devil story. Maybe it's got some threads that will carry over to the proper finale and so on. But yeah, it's an exciting thing because, as you guys have said, when they've brought back classic monsters before, it's a bit hit and miss. It's a little bit like, yeah, we prefer the classic monsters for whatever reason. Whereas I have got a feeling, I do agree with you guys, I've got a feeling that the Sea Devils are going to be, or the Sea Devil, which, plural, whatever, that it's going to be a good romp. I'm hoping it's got a classic feel to it. I'm hoping it doesn't have all the, like we've seen with Jodie's era thus far with sort of the production values, which is a great thing. But it feels very clean cut and feels very Marvel to a degree. I'm hoping this is a little bit rough around the edges, a little bit, there's like, a bit of noise, in the picture quality, a little bit of, sea salt, doing the rounds and, I'm trying to say just a little bit, not so clean cut as some of the previous stuff. So who knows? Okay, let's do a few more questions then before we wrap this up. Mark, do you think we are going to see some kind of resolution between the Doctor and Yaz in this Sea Devil story? Because I think a lot of people are expecting the Sea Devil, the creature itself, to be the primary driver for the story. But I've just got a funny feeling it's going to be not as much as that. So do you think, like I mentioned earlier about tying these threads up and whatnot, do you think we'll get some kind of conclusion or a view to a conclusion before the finale between the Doctor and Yaz? Because that has been bubbling away.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we kind of take these last three specials as a kind of trilogy, I guess, then yeah, I think there'll absolutely be some, you would hope there would be some development anyway, because presumably, because we all know it's not going to end well, whatever happens, because Jodie Whittaker's either going to turn into Hugh Grant or, go off somewhere and leave Yaz behind and then turn into Hugh Grant. But so yeah, it's going to build to something, and the Doctor addressing the feelings or lack of feelings that they have for Yaz. We're either going to have, I mean, I just hope we don't have another Martha Jones moment, which is essentially just the Doctor just being a bit awful to Yaz until Yaz just decides to leave. I hope there's going to be more to it than that, and I hope, yeah, like you say, I think there will be a bit more in the Sea Devils episode, but it won't completely resolve the story because that's presumably going to be the main kind of character drama in the final story.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, cool. Matt, do you think we're going to have a full focus on the Sea Devil, or do you also think that we're going to have some other stuff going on that's a bit more important? So the Doctor and Yaz, their relationship, and potentially stuff to do with Dan. What's going to happen with him?
Yeah, I'd like the Sea Devil or Devils, hopefully, to take centre stage. I don't think they will. I think there's too much to wrap up with just 2 episodes left. It's 2, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. The Timeless Child thing, it's really worrying me now because I've supported that for a while and I've never been against it as long as Chibnall saw it through. And the end of Flux, I thoroughly enjoyed Flux. The end of Flux left me not enjoying Flux, if you know what I mean. It just did not come to a conclusion. So
I liked it, but then I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it will resolve itself somehow, or a little bit more will be told. I think we'll be fed little droplets of information, nothing concrete. And especially, I've seen, I don't know if anybody else has seen the latest comic coming out exploring the origins of the Fugitive Doctor. Really leads me to think that Chibnall's just going to leave it open-ended. And we're not going to know any more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. we'll see the fob
that
watch.
aside,
Buried in the TARDIS forever. Yeah. Well,
exactly.
Not forever, but one day.
Russell can come back to it if he would like to at a certain time, or not. That's really worrying me at the moment. But I also think that the same with what Mark just said with Yaz and the Doctor's relationship. I think they're just going to drip feed a little bit of information to us, a little bit of the hint of where it's going to go, where the way that people want it to go or not. I kind of feel that, as Mark said, the whole Martha storyline is going to repeat itself a little bit. It's never going to end well. So they've hopefully it resolves itself in a nice way, but I can't see it happening. Although the biggest shipper is obviously Dan, who's just kind of forcing it to happen, even if they're not feeling it.
I was going to say that the timeless children thing does open up another possibility that actually the 13th Doctor and Yaz just live happily ever after, and then Russell T's era is just one of the random timeless Doctors that have now been introduced into the canon. He could literally just pluck her from his history, no problem. And then we'll come back to them once Yaz has got old and grey and passed away, and the Doctor's back out in the universe. Who knows?
Oh, I don't know, dude. That's just a pseudo reset button to me. That whole thing. It's the same with the multiverse stuff. It's like the dude that woke up from a dream because everyone thought was it Dallas? Everyone thought he was dead, and he woke up. It was all a dream. It's like that kind of storytelling get out, like on a technicality. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry, all that stuff with Jodie and Yaz, but they died, right? No, they're in this other pocket universe over here, living happily ever after. In the real universe here, this is where the real stuff's going on with this Doctor. Yeah, I don't know, man. I can see it going that way to a degree, but Maria, then, what do you reckon then? Do you reckon the Sea Devil or the Sea Devils will take centre stage in this upcoming one, or will they just be sort of an embellishment to sort of support the Doctor and the companions and stuff and what they're up to?
I really want the Sea Devils to be a major part of it. I mean, if you're going to make the effort to actually bring them back after however many years it is, because it's been a long while, I think they deserve to be centre stage. But I've got this horrible feeling, and when Mark was talking about the 13th Doctor and Yasmin going off into the sunset, I kind of had these horrible visions in my head. Well, I think one of the most cringy moments for me was when Rose was with the human Doctor in the alternative universe, and they shared a kiss, and off they went. And I think if they kind of did something like that with the 13th Doctor and Yasmin, off they went, and there was like rainbows and stuff like that. I don't think I would personally enjoy it. And there's been so little time to really make their story believable. I mean, if it had been something that had been invested in from the beginning, I would have probably believed it more. But it feels like something that, because I read something that it was something that Jodie Whittaker brought to the producer's attention, that obviously there was this fan base that are they called shippers? That wanted this to happen, and they kind of incorporated it into the story. So it kind of feels like it wasn't an original idea that they had, and it's just something they've reacted to. And I'm not saying I'm against it, but I think there's so little time to kind of make it feel believable and real. And because that the 13th Doctor is going to regenerate at some point, and there's going to be a new Doctor. How is it going to be resolved? It's going to go one way, which I think is going to be, tears at some point. Whether the next story will concentrate on their relationship, as Matt says, I think they will drop hints about it. I think some of the best stories are where you get little snippets of information rather than kind of seeing the whole resolution. Leave it, give us little hints, but don't necessarily tell us the whole story. There's so much as the guys have said, to wrap up really of this era, because there's only 2 episodes, and what are you going to concentrate on? Are you going to concentrate on wrapping up the timeless children, the relationship, Phasmin? Are you going to concentrate on the monster? It's difficult to say. Knowing what Chris Chibnall does, I think it will be a mixed episode. I don't think it's going to go full monster, but there'll be probably a little bit of everything in there. I don't know. He's only got an hour on the next story, so let's see.
Okay, yeah, good answer. So, last question for you guys then. Let's go to Matt. Do you think, this is a cheeky 2-part question, it's very quick, do you think the regeneration for Jodie, ultimately, do you reckon it will be a very drawn-out, long, emotional David Tennant job? Or do you think it will be a quick flash in the pan when Matt regenerated into Peter Capaldi, that sort of blink and you miss it? And it's, do you think it's that way or the other way? And then lastly, Hugh Grant as the Doctor, yes or no? Shoot.
Well, Hugh don't know that that's not going to happen, so it could. But I don't know. I think Hugh Grant, I mean, he would be great as the Doctor, I think. Whether or not he's too A-list, it's never going to happen, is it? But you never know. He would be great, and I would support it if it was true. I'd be very happy. I think he'd be great, and we obviously saw a little bit of that in Curse of the Fatal Death. But I don't know. I can't see it happening. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
The other part was, do you think Jodie's regeneration will be a long emotional thing like David Tennant's regeneration, or do you think it will be very quick, like when Matt regenerated into Peter?
So I'm gonna say none of those. I think it's going to be more like Christopher Eccleston's. It's not drawn out. It's not a flash in the pan, so quick you miss it. Smith to Capaldi. I think it's just going to be the right length, because David Tennant's was way too long. It was a swan song. It was just I liked it, but it went on. But Capaldi to Smith's, it's just, I think I blinked and then there was just somebody else.
Yeah,
I think Christopher Eccleston's would be the right length, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Cool. So you're not up for the I don't want to go and all that, tears, heartstrings?
I loved it.
Okay.
But
too long though. Okay.
It did go on a bit.
Same question to Mark, dude. What are your thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we're all forgetting though is that Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi's regenerations were similarly drawn out. The Doctor uses the regeneration energy to blow up the Daleks, climbs back down the tower, gets young again.
True.
Speaks to Clara, sees Amy. So anyway, I have an alternative similar to Matt. I think Christopher Eccleston, but not the Christopher Eccleston regeneration we saw. The Christopher Eccleston regeneration that I think they did film, which was basically, you don't see a regeneration. All you see is a thing on the monitor saying, I think is something like 2 life signs, 1 dying, or something like that, to suggest that. And then you would then open the Christmas special with a new Doctor, because we are at that point where, well, we don't know. Maybe they have been cast, and maybe it's Hugh Grant, who incidentally I think would be very good. But he feels like a John Hurt kind of casting, where it's like a one night only, like anniversary special kind of a deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is what kind of happens, but we'll see with that. But we don't really know who the next Doctor is. So either they're going to make a virtue of that by some almighty cliffhanger that's going to lead into the 60th. Maybe it's going to everything's going to go wrong, and the 60th anniversary is about kind of trying to bring forth the 14th Doctor, as it were. Or is literally just going to be, we don't quite know what happened. We know the Doctor will do some heroic sacrifice, say goodbye to all our friends, get in the TARDIS, and then who knows? Tune in in November 2023. It's kind of what I'm thinking might happen.
Interesting. Good stuff. And Maria, what about you?
Yeah, I quite like Mark's idea of the Doctor just going off in the TARDIS and maybe we don't actually see the regeneration. I am kind of quite bored with the kind of upright kind of regeneration that they do, and they put their hands out and everything, and it goes on and on forever. So yeah, hopefully it will be kind of quite quick. I would quite like something actually like Peter Davison, where he was kind of quite heroic, and then, you know, there were these brief flashbacks of his companions, and then, you know, he regenerated. I don't think that actually took that long. But yeah, not anything too drawn out, hopefully. With regards to Hugh Grant being the next Doctor, interesting choice. I think Matt said he's too A-list, and I think there's probably something quite valid in that. He's been in a lot of movies playing romantic leads or non-romantic leads, I suppose. Would he do it? Is he interested in doing it? Interesting choice. I think he's old enough to do it. I wouldn't mind an older Doctor. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if he came in and did it. I don't know whether he will though. You know, as sorry.
No, I said he said that he's not doing it, but then so did Andrew Garfield. But not about Doctor Who, about something else that I won't say in case people haven't seen what I'm talking about. But I think he has worked for Russell before, and I think and Russell wanted him for the Doctor in 2004. So either this is just a rumor that's just been kind of dug up again just to sell papers, or there is something in it. Like finally the stars have aligned, and they are going to work together on Doctor Who. Well, you know, time will tell.
Yeah, we mustn't forget that. Yeah, so Hugh Grant turned down the role previously. He was offered it, wasn't he? Was it 2004? Did you say something like that? Yeah, and he's you know, probably did his fast blinking, you know, and that was it, and job done. So I don't know. I'm struggling to get my head around. And you make a great point, Mark, around. He's a sort of guy that you'd expect to come and pop up in an episode, you know, and do a one-off. Could you see the two things that are on my mind with it is the first one for the regeneration stuff, and this I'll be very quick, but it feels like there's too much of a big thing with the timing of Doctor Who at the moment to not make it a different course than what we've gone down previously, where you have the, you know, like the sad goodbye, you have the regeneration, and then it's the last 30 seconds of the episode is the new Doctor and the TARDIS is crashing somewhere, you know, and then we look forward to next year. I think there's just too much going on at the minute with the 60th, with the BBC centennial and all that stuff. It just feels like there's a big epic time bubble at the moment. So they'd probably want to do something a bit different. But with the Hugh Grant thing, if we think back to every single interview that Chris Eccleston did, David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, when they finished playing Doctor Who, was just how much they had zero time to do anything else in their life for the entire time that they were filming Doctor Who. And the schedule was so brutal, you know. And Adam and I have spoken about this a few times on the show, where if you look at Peter Capaldi, when he accepted the role to when he finished playing Doctor Who, he looks like absolute beep by the end of it. He's aged like an additional 10 years on top of, you know, so can we see somebody like Hugh Grant, who's probably got various big projects and offers on the table, just writing off his entire year to play one role on a TV show? So that's the only thing that's making me think, it just doesn't feel like it's his sort of thing that he would do at this point in his career, you know? So I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility that he might be, but I don't know, man. I just can't see. Yeah. That'd be an interesting conversation to have with your agent. It's like, well, you can do it if you like, but you won't do anything else. Like, this is going to be your only job, not just for, I don't know how long on average somebody films an average TV show or a movie. It's probably a few months, I would say. So he's probably got half a dozen things lined up in any year. So and I can't imagine the BBC can afford to say, you would have earned, I don't know, $6 million for your year's worth of work in 2023, 2022. This year, it's like a tiny, tiny portion of that, and you can't do any other work. So, I don't know, guys. I don't know. That's just my my thing. So I think we'll rewind and listen back to this episode, at some point later on in the year, and just see how correct we were. But there's about 10 other names, right, in the hat. So we'll see. So I think to round this off then, Sea Devils and Warriors of the Deep, I think the Sea Devils have won it by a long margin. There's only a couple of bits that we don't mind, I guess, from Warriors of the Deep, but the Sea Devils is just a bona fide classic. Loads of good stuff to love about that. So that's a thumbs up on the Sea Devils. And then the upcoming stuff, Legend of the Sea Devils, I think we're actually all looking forward to it. I was surprised at Maria's answer. I thought she was going to be like, sod off, Garry. Just, I can't wait for Chibbers and Jodie just to be out of the door so I can look forward to new Doctor Who. So that's good. It's good that we're all looking forward to it.
Oh, well, I never said I wasn't pleased they were going, Garry.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
We know,
But,
Maria. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Sea Devils, and I just to say, I do still like Warriors of the Deep. There's some good stuff in it, but the Sea Devils kind of outruns it. If there was a marathon, the Sea Devils would be they'd already have the baton and have finished by the time Warriors of the Deep comes in.
Mm-hmm. I'll read you. Okie dokie, let's round this out then. So, Mark, where can people find you out in the wild and doing your thing and your work and so on? Whereabouts are you?
I'm on Twitter at Old Man Crondas. I usually hawk my wares on there. So my Doctor Who podcast and articles and whatnot. So yeah, at Old Man Crondas on Twitter is probably the best place to find me, or on the Time Lash podcast as well.
Yes. Yep. Definitely check out Mark's podcast on the Time Lash. It's very good. Go and do that. And then Maria and Matt, you're exclusive to the Big Blue Box. So if you want to check out those guys' work and all that, just head over to our website, bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. You can check out their articles and reviews and stuff. It's very, very cool. So thank you, Maria. It's been very good. Thank you very much, my darling.
Oh, thanks, Garry. It's been lovely as always.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to get back and talking some Doctor Who goodness with a bunch of cool guys and gals.
Yes, and thank you very much, Mark. It's been awesome as always.
Thanks. This has been enjoyable. I'm sure it hasn't been for you because of all my fanning around with the mic button. But thank you.
Yeah, it's been good, and I think we'll wrap there for the March roundtable. Thank you, dear Doctor Who listener, for coming back and listening to another week. A bit of a change to the schedule for this one. So Adam and I are not doing our usual episode. This has been a chat with these guys about everything to do with the Sea Devils. And this was the March Roundtable. So next week, Adam should be back, and we'll get back to our review that we have been meaning to do now for the last 2 weeks, which is the Next Doctor, that David Tennant story. So we'll speak about that next week. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to these guys talking about all the classic stuff, and I look forward to see if Hugh Grant's going to pop up or not, and what's going to happen in Legends of the Sea Devils. So as always, remember to follow and subscribe to this podcast in your fave podcast app. We put a new episode out every Friday, and we'd love to have you come back and listen weekly. So if you're a new listener, if you're just finding the podcast, then we do one of these every month, by the way. So the April Roundtable, we'll find a subject and we'll talk about some Doctor Who stuff there, as always. And next week, we should be service as normal. For these guys' reviews and articles and opinions, all that stuff, head over to the website, bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. And as Mark said, you can find him on the Time Lash podcast. We're on the socials too, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Links on the website, and we have a free Discord server. So check that out as well. The link is on the website. Right, you two, or you three, we're going to round out now with our outro, as we usually do. So, until next time, remember...